So my name's Chris Day. I work for AstraZeneca here in the north. I've been with AstraZeneca about 6 years, but before that, very much a career consultant actually with Accenture. So I came over to AZ early 2010. And we're just coming to the end of, for us, what is one of the most radical transformation programs we've driven within AstraZeneca as a business, but certainly as an IT group. And I think it's one of the most groundbreaking, ambitious transformations that certainly I've seen delivered in the broader industry in recent years. And what I was asked to do today was really just take you through a bit of a context for why we set about the transformation, how we delivered that transformation, and some of the key lessons learned, and particularly some of the actions that we had to take around getting the right culture and right level of agility in place within AstraZeneca. So those of you who aren't familiar with AstraZeneca, we're a pretty big organisation now. We are pretty much a pure biopharmaceutical organisation, so we don't have any over-the-counter business. We're a pure bio play. The numbers that you see here are as of end of last year, but you can see about 25 billion in revenue in US. All these figures are US dollars. 61,500 people. We're very much a science business. I mean, clearly we've got very big manufacturing and commercial arms around all of this, but we invest on average about $5.5 billion per year in research and development. A big part of that spend happens here in the UK, and really what's changed in the business in recent years is much more of that spend is now conducted with third parties. So historically a lot of the R&D was in-house. Now we work much more with third-party organisations. About 850 collaborations in play at the moment. And you know, world-class IT is critical to making all of that collaboration just happen seamlessly. And you can see there a bit of the indication of the global spread of the business. Very, very quickly, we really hunker down on three key therapeutic areas. So all of our medicines now relate to cardiovascular, oncology, cancer, and respiratory. We've got a very large portfolio of products spread across those three. And as I say, none of this is over the counter. This is all very much prescription medicine sold on a global basis. And because we're here in the Northwest today, I thought I'd just bring to life how big the AstraZeneca operation is in this part of the world. Because people tend to assume now for us, you know, we've moved our science group to Cambridge. And I think there's a bit of an assumption that Cambridge is really where it's at for AZ, but we're a very big business here in the Northwest. Just down the road in Macclesfield is the largest pharmaceutical production facility in the UK. About 1% of UK exports by value flow from that one facility. And just up the road is Speak, which manufactures all of the flu vaccinations that are dispensed here in the UK. So we're a very, very big business, and we employ about 4,000 people just in the northwest of England. So AstraZeneca IT, so before we get any further, I need to give you a little bit of context about where we've come from. So we began our transformation journey back in really late 2013. We just had a new CEO at the time, a guy called Pascal Soireau, who really turned the company on its head. And he said, you know, a bit of a rarity actually. He was a CEO who was very passionate about technology and had a very clear view about technology and the role it could play in helping AstraZeneca reinvent itself. But as an IT group, we were in pretty bad shape. And in mid-2013, we acquired a new global CIO, a guy called David Smoley. And Dave and I sat down and did a basic SWOT analysis and really looked at where we were as an IT group. Now, we're a very big IT group. Back in 2013, we used to burn about $1.3 billion US a year on IT in AstraZeneca. We operate across 25 different countries. So a very big global IT business. And, you know, there were some key strengths, but a multitude of weaknesses that were really getting in the way of great IT delivery. And, you know, I've listed out some of these here. You know, we were very deficient, a bit of background, very deficient when it came to in-house skills. So we were completely outsourced, or pretty much completely outsourced back in 2013. We'd been single source with IBM. We'd moved from IBM to 7 alleged best-of-breed suppliers, and that model just wasn't working. We had very little internal skills. We had people who were really great at supply management, but people who really didn't understand technology, because all of that technical knowledge had very much gone out of the door and was with the supplier organisations. The skills that we had were very, very patchy. We had pockets of goodness, but not many. We weren't really aligned with the business. If you looked at the business leadership teams and their teams beneath them, IT was never at the table. IT was just almost a pseudo supplier tucked away in the corner, and there was very little engagement with that business community. And we had a very complex operating model, and it took an eternity to get things done. It used to take us 4 months to commission a server in one of our data centres that our hosting provider ran for us. And if you were a project manager, you might need to raise 7 statements of work to get a relatively small piece of project work delivered because of this varied ecosystem and the lack of internal capability. And all of that meant we were really slow at delivery. The quality of service was appalling. And I've got some stats that show before and after later on in this deck. And I think we were very much in last chance saloon. And, the new CEO made it very clear that we had one last chance to correct this. And if we didn't, far more drastic scenarios would await us. And he was very clear. He wanted a world-class IT organisation, and he was willing to invest. But we were just light years away from that. And equally, just as we were bad at delivery, we were really expensive as well. So if you look at pharma, best in class, IT spend as a percentage of revenue is about 3.3%. The number varies, but it's about that. In 2013, we were at 5.4. So not only did we suck at delivery, service, business relationship, we were also significantly more expensive than our peers as well. And by the way, I don't think pharma's the most efficient of industries when you look at benchmark comparatives. So we had to change. And, in AstraZeneca, we don't believe in lots of big, complex, glossy strategies or strategy documents. So we had one key slide that underpinned our whole transformation journey. And fundamentally, we said that in 3 years, we would turn AZIT from being a failing organisation to a world-class IT organisation. And the 5 pillars are on screen. And some of this is very, very obvious to many of you. But I can tell you it was a complete culture shock to many people in AZIT. So firstly, we said we will have a relentless focus on the customer. Our sole remit in life is to make the AstraZeneca business succeed. And that means all of our people working with the business at all levels in the organisation. And not only working with them, but having the courage to introduce new ideas, but also challenge them where we see suboptimal ideas coming through. Number 2, we said, we just got to be great at the basics. We said great IT should be like oxygen. You just consume it. You don't know it's there, but it's consumed. And again, we were just light years away from that. We said to achieve that, we would achieve technical leadership. And what I mean by that is building the folks internally with the technology skills and the connections back out into the external marketplace to bring great new technology in a proactive way that would help the AstraZeneca business jump forward. And we'd lost much of that through the previous outsourcing regime. The 4th component, simplification. We invested very heavily in this area, so we built, one of the first jobs I did was build a Lean Six Sigma capability within the IT organisation. It wasn't enormous, it was about 6 individuals. What they were brilliant at was going out and teaching the rest of the organisation to think in a lean, efficient mindset and relentlessly hunt down and deal with complexity. And in a minute, you'll see very early on we dealt with a complex operating model. But, lean and agile and simplification was a very key part of our agenda and still is today. And then the 5th point really is collaboration. And what I mean by collaboration in this context is that we would excel in those technologies that would really help the business collaborate with the external community and internally. So those 850 collaboration partnerships, but also pulling together all of our scientists across the world. And we said that we would excel in the collaboration space. So we had 5 very, very, simple pillars. And we said we would, really those underpinned our journey over the subsequent 3 years. And obviously we had a level of definition that supported each of these. And then we had quite a provocative, stretch challenge that we set the organisation. Now, you've got to remember that back in 2013, AstraZeneca business and AstraZeneca IT had got used to having large amounts of funding available to it. You know, we're a high margin business, so 84% gross margin. So when times are good, you know, very high levels of investment within the business, and people get lazy. And I'm a big believer in constraining resources to drive innovation. And we wanted to completely change the mindset within IT. So we said, and this was us proactively saying this to the business and to our people, that we would deliver twice the value, or twice the services for half the cost by 2018. Now, it was never really intended to be a hard measure, and we were never really intending to be measured on it by the time 2018 came. But it was a very provocative statement, and it was deliberately intended to focus people's minds that you don't need large amounts of funding to be innovative. You can do more with less, and that was very much part of our ethos. And I can tell you, it went down like the business were very, very cynical, but obviously very pleased with what we were suggesting. Our IT workforce, this was completely alien and provoked, certainly in the first 6 months, even arguably the first year, a very strong allergic reaction. However, we have subsequently proved, as you'll see, that we can get a long way there. So that was really one of the underpinning principles. And again, you know, we don't believe in complex charts. We had a very simple 3-year roadmap. And we said by the end of that roadmap, so this was really, we said starting in 2014, by the end of 16, you know, we would have achieved world-class, and by that we meant exceeding world-class benchmarks in our industry. And the first year, 2014, frankly, was just about getting control and beginning the whole simplification process. So we had over 8,000 end-of-life servers in our infrastructure estate. Service quality had fallen through the floor. So in 2014, we launched a very big infrastructure investment and rationalisation program on a global basis. We'd had very little use of cloud applications, so in 2014 we went hell for leather, rolling out cloud, what we call foundational cloud apps, those apps that we thought would really help the business move forward. And again, many of you will have implemented these technologies, but in the space of a year we implemented Office 365 globally, Salesforce globally, Workday globally, ServiceNow, and then we've subsequently deployed Concur. And you know, we went very, very fast. We deployed Office 365 in 5 months, which for a global business on our scale is pretty good going. And Salesforce we deployed across all our territories in 9 months. And again, that's the fastest Salesforce deployment rate. And I'll talk in a minute about, you know, how we achieve that. The other thing we did at the same time was a bit of open heart surgery on the IT organisation. So my team put in place a new operating model in about 3 months, from design through to implementation. And then we, to be blunt, we ripped apart the legacy workforce. So we, you know, all of the supply management staff that we had, you know, we began to reduce. We actually took out 400 roles out of 1,900 onshore. And then we re-recruited back about 200 new people, and those new people all had great hands-on technology skills. So it was almost like a reboot of the onshore organisation. And then in parallel to that, you know, we opened the first of our offshore delivery centres. So by the end of 2014, we'd built a centre in Chennai in southeast India, and we had 300 people in place delivering live service. Because the other key component, I'll talk a bit more about this in a minute, is you know, we believe that the only way of really regaining control of technology and fixing this was to re-insource the majority of the work that we previously outsourced, and building Chennai and our global technology centres is a key enabler. So 2014 was very much flurry of activity around stabilising. In 2015, we saw service improvement because of the infrastructure investment. We extended the cloud solutions a little bit, so we rolled out Concur and a number of supply chain cloud-based solutions, but it was more incremental. We invested very heavily in Agile and Lean really in 2015. So we have an Agile team of about 7 or 8 people, but we've gone from almost zero agile adoption to half of our portfolio now being delivered through agile methods. And by the end of 15, we'd really got to about 30% of the portfolio, so very dramatic progress in a year. And by the end of 15, we had really gone very, very hard on insourcing, and at the end of 15, we had about 1,600 people in our centre in Chennai, and we were delivering about 75 services, and I'll talk a bit more about insourcing in a minute. And 2016 really is, if you like, the kind of final leg of a journey where all of the investment and hard work in 15 pays dividends. I'll take you through some of the improvement metrics at the moment, but this year very much for us is about finishing that kind of foundational journey while at the same time really going hard on building up digital capabilities. And we now have about 120 professionals who I would say, and I really hate the term digital, but if you look at digital technologies, we've got about 120 professionals who operate in that space. So a very aggressive agenda, and we said at the end of 2016 we would be pretty much at or approaching world-class status. Now, I talked about insourcing, and really insourcing was kind of at the heart of all of this. So we saw insourcing as a way to, frankly, take out cost, reduce complexity, and build the right level of agility and kind of entrepreneurialism that we wanted to see in the AstraZeneca organisation. So we began the journey with about 5,500 resources in our supplier base. That model was failing. There were just too many handoffs. It was too difficult to get work done. There was no ownership for driving efficiency improvements within that supplier base. Now, we hadn't managed the suppliers that well, but that's kind of beside the point. The model just wasn't working, and it was really, really expensive. So, if you look on average, we were paying in 2013 about $100,000 on average for each of our third-party resources. And when I wrote the insourcing business case, because I'd worked extensively in India with my previous employer, we knew that we could get great people in India for about $23,000. And the reason the model was so expensive was, if you take one of our application development partners, you've got the guy doing the coding, you've got multiple layers of management above him, all of which drives supply margin. And then because we were AstraZeneca and we didn't really trust the suppliers, we'd put our own supervisory layers in as well. And it just builds cost and complexity. Now, there's a lot of skepticism on the business side and within IT about re-insourcing because not many in the industry had done this. And it was a bit of a question mark about could we do it at pace, could we really realise these benefits. And the approach we took was pretty much we would insource any service where there was clear economic and strategic benefit to AstraZeneca. So that was a kind of lens or criteria filter that we applied. And in early 2014, we began the insourcing process. Now, by the way, all of this was delivered internally. We didn't have any external consultants other than I think we had about 4 guys from PA Consulting helping us. But this was all very much an internal effort. And, if you look at where we're, or how we're insourcing, some of the insourcing is coming onshore to some of the reskilled people in the onshore workforce that I talked to. But we've built from scratch what is today a 1,700-person strong facility in India. These are all AstraZeneca people, by the way. They're not supply people rebadged. They're people that we've recruited organically over the last 2 years. We've got a very small team in San Francisco, but they're very much more innovation-focused, working with the new tech coming out of the valley to proactively bring that into AstraZeneca to drive the business forward. And then 3 weeks ago, we opened our centre in Mexico, which will be a nearshore centre servicing the Americas. That'll be about 400 people. And then we've opened as well a similar nearshore centre in China, in Dalian service Asia Pacific. So it's a very big gamble for us. I think a lot of people internally said it couldn't be done, but all of the things that we were concerned about, would we be able to get great real estate? Would we be able to recruit at pace? Would the model work? All of those concerns have ebbed away, and I'll show you some of the benefits in a second. This just brings to life the kind of model in reality. So on the left-hand side, you can see our third-party cash spend. has dropped by $347 million since 2013. And actually the biggest drop in there, the blue box, is third-party services. The really cool part of the model is you'll see on the other side our IT FT, manpower count, has grown very significantly from 1,700 to about 3,200. And these numbers are out of date. The actual manpower numbers are somewhat higher. This was end of last year. But actually, if you look at the manpower cost, it's actually stayed flat. So we dramatically expanded our own workforce, and we've kept the cost flat, and we've taken out all of that third-party spend. And you can see here that really by the end of this year, we'll be about 65, I think maybe 70% insourced. So the benefits that this has delivered, again, we've got a very simple metrics dashboard that we use when we talk to our business colleagues. And I've just picked out a couple of these here. So business satisfaction, and what we're missing from here is the 2013 numbers. But in 2013, business satisfaction with IT was 44%. Now, that was a very, very, very low point. I don't think it could have got much worse, frankly. But you can see the linear progression, and as of today, we're running at 82% business satisfaction with IT. And you know why? Because actually, if you look at the other metrics, the operational services dramatically improved following all of the transformation activities we've done. It used to take us literally, in some cases, days to address a critical incident. We had far too many of them, and embarrassingly, it could take a day plus to get them addressed. As we came into this year, we were expecting to be under 3 hours for resolving a critical incident, and actually last month we dropped to about an hour and a half. So it's a very dramatic improvement, and actually the rate of critical outages has dropped from 20 per week to less than 10 per month. And again, if you look at May's numbers, I think we were running at 7. And for a big global business, we think that's pretty good going. Project delivery, I'm a little bit skeptical about some of the project delivery numbers, but we have dramatically reduced the cycle time it takes to deliver projects through having a more flexible ecosystem, through the investment in Agile. And you can see there, we had 8,000 plus end-of-life servers, and as of today, we've got a couple of hundred that will be dealt with really by the back end of this year. So the business loved that uplift in service, and that's reflected in the satisfaction scores. The other thing that's missing from here is our own internal IT employee engagement scores, and they were up 15 percentage points at the end of last year, running at about 75%. People favourable and happy with working in AstraZeneca IT. And, I don't know what the numbers were for 2013, but I suspect it was much closer to 55, 60 at best. And then the best thing from the business perspective is all of this transformation has significantly reduced the cost base. So 2013, as I say, we were running at about 1.3 billion in operating expenditure on IT. This year, that has dropped now to 930 million. And we've given a commitment to the business next year that 930 will drop probably to the region of about 860. So, quite a dramatic reduction in cost. And this really matters to the AstraZeneca business because, that saving is enough to fund 3 late-stage clinical trials. And in a time when AstraZeneca has a wonderful drugs pipeline and needs to throw every cent it can at getting that pipeline through, this plays an enormous contributing factor. And largely because of this, we've gone from being the whipping boys of the organisation. I used to hate going into meetings with the business, to the point where we're now seen as trusted, credible partners with a very enhanced reputation. And I can tell you AstraZeneca IT is a much more exciting, more fun place to work as an employee. One of the things I'm most proud about is I said at the very beginning we wanted IT to really be proactive and work with the business on really helping the business understand how technology could improve business performance. And proactively, we've done a great deal of work around using technology to make AstraZeneca a great place to work. And all of the improvements on the slide here were ideas that we as an IT group took to the business. They weren't requested by the business. This was us actually working with them. And so, for example, when I arrived in AZ, we had multiple different passwords. You had to log on to the network whenever you went to a site. Logging on to Wi-Fi was quite cumbersome. We've now rolled out what we call lift the lid. So wherever you go in the world, you open your laptop, you turn on your device, and you are connected. And that's as difficult as it is. And that works in any single building or any site in the AstraZeneca network. If you worked in our Salesforce teams, we used to be really bad, very, very clunky mobile technology. Again, IT proactively has completely refreshed that. We used to work on very long hardware refresh cycles. So, you used to be given an AZ laptop. That was what you got. And if you were lucky, in 4 to 5 years, you might get a new device. But there was no choice about the device you got. We introduced choose your own device. And so any business user can go to the online catalogue, and there is a choice of 11 different, what I call laptop-style devices that they can choose from. Now, of course, it's subject to line manager approval and the business funding being available, but we believe in getting IT out of the way of business decisions. And if the business want to invest money in laptops and mobile devices, they can. And we give them the freedom. We just give them the great choices. Wi-Fi, said there is no log-on for Wi-Fi now. There's only one location globally where we enforce a Wi-Fi log-on, and ironically, that's the IT centre in Chennai, just because of a few concerns around other companies in the near vicinity. But there is no, so even as a guest walking into an AstraZeneca location, we have a guest Wi-Fi that is completely open, anybody can access. So what do we learn through all of this? It was a very big, very difficult transformation to pull off. We invested a ton of the company's money. There was about $650 million went into making this happen, but as you can see, the paybacks were quite significant. The first thing is, we don't believe in big strategy documents. I think if you get the right culture in place, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And we made a very deliberate decision to reboot the culture of AstraZeneca IT. And it was something that happened more broadly in the business. But what I mean by that is we went from being very conservative, very risk-averse, very, very process-driven, to actively encouraging smart risk-taking and entrepreneurial behavior. And one of the best examples of that is, 365, when we rolled it out, even Microsoft said, well, you're looking at a 10-month deployment window. We set an ultra-ambitious target initially of 4 months, and we came in a couple of months behind that. In the previous AstraZeneca IT mentality, we would have played safe and probably taken a year and a half to roll it out. The guy who ran that program now runs our research and development IT group. He wasn't a program manager. He took a massive personal risk. But the mantra we adopt is take a smart risk, take a gamble. No one's ever going to be criticised or dinged for taking a personal risk or showing entrepreneurial behaviour. I mean, clearly, if you do something really, really stupid, then you will be in trouble. But, smart risk-taking is very much the order of the day. And actually, that entrepreneurial mindset is really what's paying dividends, because when you walk around our centre in Chennai now, it's really incredible. I mean, I was with our hosting team 3 weeks ago, and they were so proud to tell me of all of the ways that they've found over the last 6 months, what they've done to correct that, and what they've been able to deliver back to broader IT in the business in terms of efficiency gains and cost reduction. And you think, wow, and you compare that back to the culture that we had 3 years earlier, where frankly people just didn't care. They might care a bit about the total service, but not efficiency really or cost. And secondly, the other major lesson, I guess, was change management. So we were very lucky in that we had a CEO who was passionate about technology and helped us really drive this through. But, we worked so hard with our people. They'd been through about 4 previous transformations that had all failed. And there was a high level of, what's different this time, Chris, you're, if this fails, you'll just disappear off, and, we'll go through the whole thing again in 2 years' time. So we went out of our way to walk the floors, tell the story. We didn't have communications consultants. It was all done very much in-house, and it was just old-fashioned empathy, connecting with the team, and really bringing the organisation through really what was a kind of open-heart surgery period for a couple of years, and that's really paid us dividends. And we've asked an awful lot of our people, and the vast majority have really stepped up to plate and delivered far more than I could ever have expected. I mean, if you look at our Agile initiative, no Agile really capability in place 2 years ago. I took a young lady of 29, passionate about Agile, but had no management experience, had never really led a big program, and she's now running the Agile initiative globally across AstraZeneca IT. You empower people, and it's really amazing what can be achieved, and she holds her own with the IT leadership team, and she goes toe-to-toe with the business leaders, and she's built just such an enormous level of respect and really taken us to the point where we think we've got one of the best Agile rates of adoption, certainly in the pharma industry, if not more broadly. So I think the big lessons are it's all about the culture, and I think rebooting the culture was just critically important for us. And I think strong, effective change management through the process. And I think that concludes the story.